Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And I would have said I'm really happy to be here, but I believe they've invited me to 40 after 40 almost a decade earlier. But despite that, very, very happy to be addressing all of you here today. And I have a question for the room. You guys have been attending this program since this very morning. How many of us are really aware of the 4% rule of retirement? I hope a number of people would have covered it this morning. Have they? 4% rule of retirement, I'd love for your views on what does it really stand for. So you're saying grow 4% every year and not more. Withdraw 4% every year and not more than that. So what I'm hearing is you're saying that for your retirement corpus, whatever you need as annual expenses should ideally be 4% of your corpus. Is that correct? Is that correct? Okay, any other views around this? Anyone? How much do you think should be your retirement corpus if you want to retire comfortably? Sorry? 55 times of 25 times. Okay, 25 times of your annual expenses. Wonderful. So if you end up spending, say, 10 lakhs a year on your lifestyle, would you say 2.5 crores is sufficient for you to be able to retire? Yeah? Okay. Let's try and understand what a lot of influencers have to say about this. So if you were to go online on social media, you would notice that the 4% rule is really popular. They say that 25 times of your annual spend is what you need to save as a retirement corpus. And funnily enough, all influencers will tend to parrot this because they've read it on a blog, they've read it somewhere. But this rule actually originated in the early 90s in the US. And the context of this rule or the basis has completely changed today. As you can imagine, even if you spend about 10 lakhs per annum, 2.5 crores should ideally not be sufficient for your retirement, correct? So I think the first part, I really want all of you to understand how much money you would need for retirement. Any guesses here in the room? Any guesses? I'm taking bids. 5 crores? How many people for 5 crores? 5 crores should be good. How many people for 10? 10. Okay, we see 10. And let's figure out. So given these are the facts of India today, where your inflation in India, I'm taking it to be 7%, where in metro cities, for a lot of lifestyle things, the inflation is closer to 9-10%. But let's not go there. We're talking about retirement. 7% per annum inflation, pre-tax returns on Nifty for almost 20 years would come to about 12% safely, pre-tax. On bonds, 9% per annum. Capital gains tax, let's take it to be 15% as a standard, effectively. And your current annual living expenses, imagine 1.5 lakh a month and you are comfortable. Is that correct? Fair arguments to say? Okay. And you also want to maintain an emergency corpus of about 50 lakhs that, God forbid, if there is a medical emergency or a need, you can immediately withdraw it. Maybe in the form of a fixed deposit, if you may, right? With this, the real rate of return on equities after tax, if you'll realize, on 12%, when you remove the 15% tax, it comes to 10.2%. And you're removing the 7% inflation, which means ideally you're making 3.2% on equities, yeah, after removing for inflation. And then when you look at bonds, when you remove taxes as well as inflation, your real return is just about 0.6%. Now imagine, my portfolio is not going to be all equities, is not going to be all bonds, because as a retired person, I need to maintain a balance. So let me think of a 60-40 split between equities and bonds, which means on this portfolio, I may actually make 2.18% as inflation-adjusted tax-paid return for that corpus to continuously grow, and from the growth, keep funding my lifestyle. Now, instead of the 4% rule, in all practical reality, even when you add the corpus, this ideally means you need 8.25 crores to retire in the Indian context today. And when you add the corpus, it's not 25 times your annual expenses, it's practically 50 times your annual expenses, give or take. However, none of the financial influencers are really telling us about this. But if you think about it, is this a huge ask? I would think it really is. Because if I have to look at how many people are US dollar millionaires in our country to be able to afford 8.25 crores of net assets, well, India is number 14 with the number of millionaires around the world. And while it's rounded up to 0.1% of the population, it's actually more closer to 0.05% of the population. Correct? Unfortunately, you can't really add real estate and the value of real estate in your retirement corpus because it may not always generate enough rentals. And you ideally don't want to sell your property to be able to fund your retirement. Correct? Now, while most people over this two-day forum are going to talk about investment opportunities and how you should be putting in money and in which product, I would instead recommend that if you plan on retiring even at the age of 50 or 60, a much easier way to actually get to that goal of $1 million of savings, other than real estate, would ideally be to build a business. And people tend to think that it's younger people who start startups. However, if you were to look at the median age around the world, median age of people starting startups is at the age of 45, when they've actually gotten a lot of experience in managerial capacities, gotten depth of knowledge in a particular industry. That's when they think, I've got enough savings to be able to start a business. And when I look at this, India right now has 14.5 crore people, 145 million above the age of 60. And this category in itself is the fastest, largest growth category for the 10-year period from 2021 to 2031, where it's expected the number of people above the age of 60 is going to rise by 40% in this decade. By comparison, the overall population is only going to grow by about 8%. And I think that's where really lies the white space. That there aren't enough businesses being built for senior citizens. The only thing we really get to hear about or talk about is senior living homes. But there is so much more tech-enabled that we can do for senior citizens that if you were to look at the landscape of all opportunities available, there is nutrition and supplements for seniors, which could also be Ayurvedic, and you may not really need FDA approvals and the like to enter into as a business. I wouldn't ask you to get into daily convenience and selling of groceries. And of course, health insurance and financial products is something that our sponsors for this event, let's leave it to that because it's a highly regulated category. But if I had to think of where is it that massive businesses can be built, I would rather say that in catering to menopausal ladies is a huge category, is a pain point which has not been tapped into. Building a community, getting these people side gigs or jobs to be able to keep earning some kind of active income that keeps them busy, media and content for it. And despite this landscape, there are a few startups which have started building in this category, which I personally have no affiliation towards. So when I take a few names, don't think that I'm promoting anyone's product. It's just to give you an idea that none of these names are big enough that other players today can't get into. And that's where really lies the opportunity. For example, Senior World. When you look at the website, it seems like they are into building communities and sending senior people on tours and travels to keep them engaged. However, as you scroll down, you find even electronics catering to seniors. And not just that, there's a lot more. Well, revenues for 1 year are upwards of 15 crores. All in a matter of 4 to 5 years. If you look at this another startup called Emoha, It seems like they talk about teleconsultation on demand, experts available to cater to senior needs. And funnily enough, while insurance may not be available to a lot of seniors, what they built is kind of like a subscription plan to say, you will have doctors on command. You will have a nurse to constantly check on whether you've eaten, what are certain measurements of body parameters. And a lot of NRIs and actually children living in the metros would love to pay that extra 15, 20,000 a year for someone to just do those weekly checks and ensure, if God forbid, an ambulance is required, there's going to be someone who's going to send it. Has received over $15 million in funding just over the past 2 years. Then there is another startup called Senjoy, which apparently offers family on demand, saying people who can come and spend time with seniors just to keep them entertained. And you know, all of these players are actually also playing on the guilt of a lot of children to not be able to cater to the needs and time requirements of their parents. And if you think these businesses aren't working, as I've shown you a few numbers, a lot of them are doing upwards of 10, 15 crores of annual revenue when this category hasn't even grown. So the potential here is a lot more. And then when you build one such product, you don't just limit yourself to your core offering, which could be media, or it could be subscription services of health facilities on call. You in fact make it a marketplace. You make it a media program on subscription. You give them friendships, and most of these programs work on small subscription values per month. Annually, about 20, 25,000. Look at this. This product has over 1 million senior citizens listed on it. I've never used it, but it just amazes me to see the kind of services that are being provided, which is secure payments card. I don't know how secure they would be, but the idea that senior citizens feel, I'm not comfortable paying through these digital modes, and if someone can solve it, pay bills and recharges on a monthly basis without them having to remember and pay late fees. Giving them part-time jobs so that they can keep themselves engaged and busy. Number of these things, right? And of course, there's media. They also have a marketplace where all supplies related to senior citizens can, of course, be delivered. Again, about $10 million of equity funding just over the past couple of years. In fact, a category which is catering to, a lot of tools and machine and small home appliances that senior citizens would require. If you need to see what's really being demanded in other countries of the world, you could simply go to websites like HKTDC or Made in China and just look at what all novel products are coming up to cater to the needs of senior citizens. And if you were to look at the price delta, something that you can easily get at about 4,000 to 5,000 rupees from China is getting sold in India at upwards of 20,000 rupees. So while the gross margin in this category is about 75%, even on the landed cost, when you pay custom duties and get it shipped and get it to your warehouse, the gross margin in this category is closer to 65%, where in all other electronics, it's roughly close to 55%. Which means this category is currently being underserved, and the kind of potential you'll see over the next 10 years is massive and ripe for a lot of disruption. Again, another platform which sells daily living needs for senior citizens. Okay, fun piece of fact. Let's look at the top 10 most subscribed to YouTube channels in the world. You'll notice that 6 out of these 10 actually cater to children. The reason for that is that what works on YouTube is watch time. Which channel, which video can the audience continue to watch for a long duration? And what do people do with their kids just to keep them busy? They will put on a kid-friendly YouTube channel, and the kid is going to sit in front of it, play with their toys, maybe keep running the entire playlist. The watch time keeps increasing. They keep rising up the ranks and keep making so much money in ads. All of these businesses are easily upwards of $500 million worth. All of them. And if I think of another category, which could practically just sit in front of the TV or a screen and keep watching and watching and watching, is the elders, where I don't really see a lot of media channels being built right now, but is in massive white space. For example, let's look at Pasta Grannies, which actually shows videos and media of grandmas from around the world making food for their grandchildren, their recipes, how they cook, their cooking styles, and it's wildly profitable. Look at it. Just one video is about almost 400K views, which is absolutely nuts. There is makeup tutorials for elderly women. Huge category. Huge category. And I think the right time to start building for this category is when you're really in your late 40s or early 50s. Because ideally, your audience would be growing older with you. And I see this one channel, which is, again, I don't know the gentleman, but it's called The Fired Couple. And I'm sure all of you understand the full form of FIRE in this forum. Yeah, financially independent and retire early. And look at the video, why we chose Thailand for early retirement. And this couple talking about what all features and benefits does the Thailand retirement visa offer you. And I think this kind of content, if you can continue to create over a 5-10 year period, quite like your wealth compounds, content also compounds in a way where 5-10 years down the line, with just little effort every day, you'll see it'll be millions and millions. If I were that age, I would totally do it. Hopefully in the next 20 years, people would be following me as an elderly creator. Possibly. Possibly. Now, you see, the reason I bring up this slide is just to tell you that early part of my career was as a practicing chartered accountant doing tax and audit advisory, which, to be honest, I did not really enjoy as much. And the content journey actually started because I thought every month, on the third Saturday, we do a half-day training program for us, for our trainees and our employees. And most of these guys are literally almost dozing off, waiting for lunch. A better way to educate the entire staff is to give them a consumable snippet of just 5 minutes every day, so that it becomes a part of their daily life. And these videos actually started off as trying to educate them, my own staff. And a lot of our clients would keep asking us the same questions again and again and again. You know, how do we do a co-founder equity split? How much ESOP pool should I keep? How do I think of taxation on this money that I'm getting from investors? And gradually those videos actually ended up becoming my video responses ready, where if someone asks a question, we could just send a link. And the client is happy that they've gotten an answer that I have given. So you see, content is not just a marketing exercise, it's a way for you to be able to productize your knowledge. And I never thought that the audience base would go to about 2 million or so. But 280 videos down over 280 days. And if you've seen the videos, there's no edit, nothing. I carry my equipment in my pocket every day. There's no mic, there's no camera. It's just shot, uploaded. It's a 20-minute exercise. And I think this as an opportunity still is one of the easiest ways for people today to build a community online that they can begin to monetize 5 to 10 years into the journey when they're also ready for retirement. And the payoff is, I mean, I can't say enough, is massive. So that's been a little bit about my journey so far. And I'm happy to answer any questions, if at all. Thank you.